What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 86 of the Overview. I'm ChanManV, and he's Harsha. Harsha for the first time, yes. And he's Doomfist ZP. Once again, the skin that we all
This
love.
has never happened to me before.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what you're talking about.
How much did we pay for this skin? Like, actually, ZP, how much did you pay for this skin? This Doomfist skin? Did you buy this skin?
75 in game.
75 in game. Yes, it's a legend. It's not legendary, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably have the skin. I feel like I should have it if I don't, just because of how much I've used it on here. So whatever.
Yeah. Well, excuse us. He's reformatted his hard drive, so we'll have to get the ZP back on cam next week. Ben, unfortunately, is not here today. He's totally bogged down. IRL, unfortunately, so we'll have to have him on next time too. But instead, we've got Harsha here, so this is Harsha's plenty of entertainment for us today. Really excited to have you on, buddy.
Hopefully, I'm not too big of a letdown.
What? Of course not, man.
Everyone on Harsha's team was so upset that about his performance here tonight that they all just cleared out. That's why there's no one from San Francisco Shock behind him right now. They actually could not stand to watch it happen.
Yeah, they cleared the room. That's why he's the only person in the practice room right now. Normally, they'd be practicing, right? Like hard at work at night, but no, they just went.
I'm just a hard ass. I kick them all out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we get started, we got a lot to talk about, but I want to actually let you guys know that this episode is sponsored by Freshly. Freshly is an awesome meals service that you can partake in, and we'll talk about it a bit more later on, but want to let you guys know up front. But lots of stuff to talk about today. Games. So we're talking about a new event. Winter Wonderland is going to be returning to us. We got Harsha here, of course, so we're going to interview him with a lot of changes in his life, so get the lowdown on that. And then, of course, preseason Overwatch League with all the matches that we've seen yesterday and tonight. We'll just kind of go through and get our opinions on just everything that we've seen, production, spectator, everything. And then lastly, just a little bit of news and then some Q&A at the end. If you got some questions for us, go ahead and email those to the overview@chanmanv.tv, and we'll try to read them out. Either probably next week, because I usually don't check my mail on doing the show. But all right, guys. So let's start with the game, just the non-esports stuff. For the just to show that we're not just an esports show. Let's talk about the Winter Wonderland, which is the holiday event that we have grown to love. Usually with the cool Christmas skins and things like that. You guys excited about this event? Is it one of your favorites?
I'll be honest. So last winter break, I didn't have a PC with me, so I couldn't play. The snowball and all of that. I didn't get any of the skins. And this year, I actually haven't been able to check out the event at all because I've just been bogged down by work.
Well, it hasn't started yet, dude. So
yeah. But I actually I don't know what the new stuff they've added in. I assume they're bringing back all the skins and then probably putting the base snowball event back in. But yeah. I mean, I'm excited to at least unlock the candy cane Roadhog skin.
Oh yeah, that'd be definitely awesome.
Harsha, you can't begin your career as a Torb one trick unless you have to play the game where he's reading from a book. So if you ever want to pursue that path, you're going to have that available to you. You'll be able to get that, play the game that you missed last year.
Yeah, sitting on that's the best. That's one of the best ones, actually. I love that one. But yes, they're bringing back the May Snowball, so you get a chance to play that too. They're actually they added a map that you can play Snowball on, so it's not just Antarctica. They redid Dark Forest, the arena map, and Snowball will take place there. They added another game mode though, which is it was so funny watching that video. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch Jeff talk about it, but I was just watching it. I'm just like, he's just trying not to say evolve like this whole time, because this new game mode is Juggernaut, where it's like a Yeti Winston versus like 5 Mays. I'm like, he's just trying not to say evolve this whole time, because that's pretty much what it is. And he's like describing it. It was like hilarious. But yeah, that's the new game mode. So we're going to have, if you want a 6Q, you'll have one of the guys be a Winston Yeti, and then the others are May. And it's literally like evolve. You go and try to find the Yeti, and the Yeti's like powering up by picking up stuff along the way. And then I'm just assuming he's going to get stronger and stronger, and then it's going to like roll reversal after that. But yeah, what do you think of that?
I actually, and I mean, I'm only half serious when I say this. I think it's a cool game mode, especially as just a side thing to entertain people. But I do kind of feel like there's an opportunity lost here by not making it a hero that people tend to have some ire to when it's the only thing being played. Like, what if it was just a Hanzo that grew in strength over the course of the map?
As the villain. Oh, okay.
Well, it'd be the one game mode where you could one-trick Hanzo, and it'd make sense because that's the only thing you can play.
That's an interesting take on that. Yeah, I guess you could do that. What about you, Harsha? You ever play Evolve? Or even Left 4 Dead? Left 4 Dead, the tank guy, in Left 4 Dead. You ever done any of that?
I'm actually an FPS noob. So I played some CSGO and I played Overwatch, and pretty much it.
All right. I mean, I remember playing Left 4 Dead in the hospital map on like the rooftop. I remember playing that like days, not even hours, days and days with my friends, and it was so fun. Just whenever somebody would turn into the tank, and we would just be killing them and stuff.
So here's the thing for me with Left 4 Dead is that it's not even playing the tank that was hilarious to me. It was in the original Left 4 Dead, like the original cast, not Left 4 Dead 2, but the voice lines for the original Left 4 Dead were some of the most hilarious voice lines.
I don't remember them. Really?
Yes, like when you had the tank come in and some guy's getting handed the tank in the corner, it's like he's killing me, like just
okay.
like the entire spectacle of the tank coming in was hilarious to me.
Okay, I can't even remember the voice lines. I'm gonna have to go back and check them out or find them online somewhere. But yeah, so that's a new game mode. That's awesome that they actually have a new one. And it's not just May Snowball. They also mentioned the Hanzo skin. There's some Hanzo skin that's showed up in maybe some of the or I don't know, just some of the different footage before that they're finally releasing. So I don't even know which one that is.
It's interesting because I remember Jeff Kaplan saying in like an interview, I think like 6 months ago, that they had 2 Hanzo skins that were completely developed but weren't being released yet. So maybe this is one of those.
Yeah. I hope they have some more holiday ones too, because I don't know. I'm the cheesy type. I like the really over the top ones. And the last event they had like regular ones, to like as half of them. I hope they don't get too far into that. But yeah, so anyways, guys, get ready for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, it's going to be the month of December, probably a little bit early January too. But that's about it for the game. I don't think there's been any kind of updates on the patch or anything like that. I mean, did we talk about Doomfist? I guess we didn't talk about some of the Doomfist changes.
Are they changing him?
Just fixing a lot of the bugs. Like I think Jeff listed out a bunch, or Jeff Goodman listed out a bunch of little changes they're making or trying out on PTR. So I don't know. It had lots to do with like I think after after you charge somebody or after you actually punch somebody and I think how they react from that. They definitely are making some corrections there. I don't actually have it in front of me. Yeah.
Is one of those bugs giving them a webcam?
No,
No.
I'm pretty sure that's one of the bugs on the it actually is there. You're just not looking at the right patch.
No, that's a realistic picture of a DP. No.
I personally have been hitting the gym very hard in recent times. I don't know what you're talking about. None of my suits fit me anymore because I'm just too swole.
Yeah, God. Actually, now that I didn't even mean to talk about this, but now that I brought it up, I need to actually go and find and bring it up here. But in the meantime, though, while I'm doing that, we'll kind of circle back. Harsha, just since we have you on here, I figured we'd do like a little mini interview with you, given that lots has changed for you, in the most recent history, and it's really, really cool news. So, I want to just get your thoughts. Congrats on joining the San Francisco Shock. I don't think anybody was shocked at that when you mentioned it because it was one of the worst kept secrets ever. But
indeed,
when you finally did announce it, that was, I think a lot of people are happy for you. So how is it being in OWL on San Francisco?
Pretty great. I can't complain. Everything about Overwatch League has been really cool so far. We have like an amazing practice facility. I have a team that so one of the things that I haven't really talked about much, but I really enjoy about this team is that we come into the season as underdogs, but I think we have like a ton of potential on this team. So what I mean by that is like we have really individually skilled players, and my goal and the goal of the rest of the coaching staff, which is Legit RC and Brad from Selfless, is that we just need to make these guys work together and make sure that their talent can actually shine through. And I guess you kind of saw a glimpse of that in the preseason so far. So I'm, really happy with my position. Pretty great to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. How did it come about? Like, were you talking to did you just talk to like Andy Miller, or who were you talking to even really just be able to even be offered this job? And were there other teams that were looking, or you were talking to too?
So this is kind of a long-winded story,
Okay.
and essentially what happened, and I'm fine saying this now, but because it was kind of revealed on Around the Watch, which was another podcast. But
yeah, sure.
Essentially, I was working with Legit RC before on building Cloud9's, mostly Western roster. And what ended up happening is that there were a bunch of contractual issues with a lot of players, and basically Jack was in Korea and decided, hey, I might as well just get this Korean team. So he picked up Kongdu, and then later on GC Busan, right? And so me and Legit were actually going to go work with another team, and that didn't pan out. And so what ended up happening is Legit linked up with Brad, his old friend from Selfless, and they were working on the team, decided they wanted to up their staff, asked me if I wanted to trial, and after a few days they're like, yeah, come on and join. And so just talked to Brett and Andy, and it worked out pretty well, I would say.
So quick follow-up question from that. Do you think Jack is going to buy the LA Gladiators?
No, dude, there's only one more top Korean team left, so he has to buy Runaway.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
But Runaway without I don't know if Runaway is going to be the same without some of those guys, or at least the entire roster's not available, is it?
They wanted to do something with bringing the entire roster into OWL, but I don't think that happened.
Yeah.
I think there's something about Runner going to the military
now,
too.
That's what I was going to say. Like, Runner, I think it wouldn't even be available. So it's kind of crazy. And I think that's a huge deal too. Like, if you can't have Runaway without Runner. So what's I gonna add? There's something I was gonna follow up with, but then ZP followed up with that. I know what it was. It was like, when you're trying out, what does that even mean? Like, whenever you're trying out with a team, I mean, are you just basically just doing, just telling them everything when you're trying out?
So basically, I think the tryout process for analysts is kind of strange, but I guess maybe it's probably the same with coaches. Although coaches, you probably do a bit more of the the managing personalities and whatnot. But for an analyst, it was just kind of watching scrims for 8 hours a day for I think it was 2 or 3 days before they decided. And I just talked to them about the game, like my vision for the game, and where I thought from watching those scrims, where I thought we needed the most improvement. And it kind of lined up with their philosophy a lot, and so I think that's pretty much why I ended up in the role.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say here, so this is an interesting topic, because I think one of the big stories about OWL Season 1, when the dust has settled, is sort of looking at what teams had a coaching and support staff that did well, and what teams had a coaching and support staff that, when judged after the fact, did very little. I guess, first of all, what are you doing effectively? Like, what is a day and your responsibilities for San Francisco? And to your knowledge, like, how does that differ potentially from how other teams might be handling the same position? Because there's a lot of different takes on how to handle an analyst position within a team right now, just to put it mildly.
So I guess you could say, first off, to set the scene, kind of, there's kind of like a hierarchy here where Brad's pretty much the head coach, and then me and Legit are adding our input. And the way it kind of works is that all of our roles, even though we were kind of hired for specific roles, we all kind of blend them together. So basically what the focus was for me specifically was kind of macro play, strategies, how we're going to take certain maps, how we're going to what comps we're going to use, and what I think is best in the metagame. And Brad was also kind of doing a bit of both of my work and Legit's work in that sense, and Legit was doing mostly single player stuff, right? So telling people what they're doing wrong mechanically, where they need to improve, kind of watching from their perspective and looking at what their biggest weaknesses are. But I mean, all of us pretty much watch the game all day, every day, and so we kind of just blend the roles together, and we're all basically in one room together with the team, going through scrims every day, going through VODs, going through walkthroughs on maps. So it's just a lot of, I would say, really structured coaching in that sense.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of just when head coach has an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator,
exactly.
that sort of thing. Do you see that kind of happening? Like people just coming as packages in a way?
So I definitely see that in other teams, specifically. Like I know, I believe Flame hired like Tyrong as the head coach. He's kind of managing personalities because he's from like an elevated position in Korea, whereas they have Mezer as like a tank coach, and then I believe they have other people working with them as well, but I don't remember off the top of my head. And I know Boston kind of does a similar thing with their coaching staff. So I do think that a lot of staffs have decided to go that way. Maybe we decide to specialize down the road. I'm not really sure, but like right now, I think what we're doing is working pretty well, so it's not that big of a concern for us.
Let me ask you this: who, at the end of the day, is actually like, obviously, team will be judged more so on wins and losses, but the thing that intrigues me about the entire coaching setup is that it feels like, because how to set up a coaching team for something like OWL is so new, it feels like you don't really have the evaluation process for different members of a team, where, like, let's throw out a hypothetical here where you have an org where maybe the support staff, like the supporting analysts, are doing a really good job, but the head coach, who actually has a direct rapport with the person who's making the hiring decisions, is sort of the one giving feedback, but that person might be the one that's like making bad decisions. Like, essentially, where is the review process for all of this? Because obviously throughout the different teams, like, some people will be doing good the job, some people will be doing not so good. But if you have a team that's like not doing well, how do you properly evaluate who's doing well on the team? Like, it's interesting to me because it doesn't really seem like there's a great way of judging all that, like there might be in more established sports.
So I'd agree with that, especially because it's like year one and not everybody knows what they're doing, I would say. Not that that's a dig at anybody. I'm just saying, like, in general, that seems like it could be an issue, right? So I think one of the cool things about Overwatch League, though, is that all the owners are very involved. I've seen like tons of them walking around actually in the stadium today and yesterday, and our guys from NRG came out today, and I think actually one of our owners, Brett, is gonna end up moving out here in January. So a lot of these owners are actually trying to be very involved with their teams. Actually, one other thing, like Huck, who's the president of gaming at Boston, yeah, for the Craft Group, right? He's actually been in with that team every day, like 24/7, pretty much. So I know, like, I think when it comes to that sort of thing, I think being involved and all the owners being very invested in this, they put in $20 million each. I think that's kind of how the review process is going to be. And, it's not perfect, but I think that it's better than not having that real insurance policy at all.
The one caveat I would say there is that, in theory, like, yes, that does make sense with that will definitely be true for certain teams with the ownership being highly involved. But some of the other ownership groups, for example, $20 million to them is sort of I'm going to go out and have a higher end dinner for myself on a personal level in terms of, like, percentage of income being spent. So there is a slight difference there, I guess, between the teams. But it does make me wonder if the teams with the more active ownership, because it is a more higher percentage, will be more aggressive in doing things like making coaching moves and being more hands-on.
I mean, it could be that. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with expectations too. Like, I think right from the get-go, you guys have probably already had this discussion as just a team, meaning like owners and management and coaching staff, players and everything. And I think, just having an honest discussion about what our expectations are for season one, and and after season one happens, kind of measuring just the season versus what those were, and then kind of going to season two. But I think that like any other coaching scenario, it's like you can't just fire you can't fire a coach after like a single season. It's like you really have to give them a chance. And I think in Overwatch League, it's probably 2 years. I bet it's probably 2 seasons. And if you don't, if the organization isn't really together, or at least a player aspect, and that doesn't seem to be working, then I could see, management really taking a look at that. But season one, like, I'd be shocked. Originally, maybe I kind of felt that, yeah, okay, people just make changes if they need to after season one. But the more and more I've thought about it, it's just like, these guys are going to be given a proper chance. And a proper chance really deserves more than just a single season.
So, okay, one quick caveat I want to say there is that you would say that, but first of all, esports is on a more accelerated timeline than traditional sports are, and you still have plenty of cases, even in sports as high as the NFL or the NBA or MLB, where you bring in management that gets canned after a full season, or even in some cases half a season. So even in those cases, like, people don't always get time. Just note.
So from my perspective, I think that makes sense. But I also have to add another caveat, in the sense that I think that there are pretty much two things that you should be doing, or one of two things you should be doing in this year of Overwatch League. I think you either build a team that you want to win now, or you build a team that you want to develop into winners down the road, right? And I think if you build a team and don't show a clear progression towards one of those goals, then maybe probably do something right.
Well, and that leads to expectations again. You know, like you say, hey, we want to win now. So that's the expectations you're under, you know, just as a, coaching staff, as a general manager, whatever it is. So if you don't win, then you're going to be measured upon that. And that's going to, look badly, for you. Sure. Is there a scenario where people do get replaced in season 1? Of course there is. I mean, you can utterly fail to the point where it's just not palatable and acceptable. But I just, for the most part, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, it would take like complete crazy failure. And I don't see that. I don't even see signs of that quite yet. So, that would actually really, really surprise me.
And I think from the preseason match we've seen, obviously they're preseason, they're not as serious as a regular season match, but it does look like Overwatch League is going to be quite competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen, like you said, we'll see what tomorrow looks like too. But the first 2 days have been awesome.
I actually think that you're going to see more parity in the beginning, though, than you would see
That's true.
later on. And the reason for that is that when you talk about this entire idea of like coaching and analysts and everything that's around, right, is that you're dealing with an environment right now where there's not a whole lot of data on many of these teams, or even the teams that had established cores, like the Fuel, for example, are still making a lot of changes. The only team that actually had a lot of game tape on them was Misfits, which we'll talk about later. But as time goes on here, there's going to be a lot of information in regards to how teams are playing, and the teams that have the more agile, involved coaching staffs compared to those that are not actually making adaptations, I think the difference will be rather profound, because you'll see some teams that will change things up regularly and with purpose, and then you'll see other teams where they're just getting completely destroyed on, say, Eichenwald for the 4th series in a row. So there's going to be some key differences there, I think, as the Overwatch League moves on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, like, just where the scapegoating happens. Like, is it going to be the players, that are going to need to be fingers pointed at them, or is it going to be, the coaching staff and, analysts that are going to have probably not the analysts, but probably the coaching staff, the head coaches that are going to have their fingers.
Personally, I think if you have any problems with San Francisco Shock, you should just blame Harsha immediately.
Oh man,
no, don't necessarily do that. We don't know the full details.
Yeah, but speaking of season 1, what are your expectations just of your team? You definitely did mention that you feel like they're underdogs, and I think that's completely fair, given that I think most people think that the Shock, or at least with preseason rankings, they thought the Shock would finish, bottom 3 or maybe 4. So do you agree with that? Do you like that? What are your thoughts on just that?
So from my perspective, and this is going to sound really optimistic, but I think that there's no reason for anybody to be working in this league if you don't think you can at least do work to end up at the top, right? And so because of that, like, from working with these guys and seeing what they're capable of, I think that we can definitely do well enough to. My goal personally is playoffs, but like, I think that everybody here is just aiming to win every game that they can, and that seems like a really PR answer, but I don't know. It's hard to give placings when this whole league ends in 6 months, right? So everybody does kind of have us in that like 9 to 12 kind of spot, or maybe 10 to 12. But I definitely don't think we're that kind of team. I think we're going to be significantly better than people think, and I actually think that it's really hard to say, because scrims don't mean everything in the world. But I think that like a lot of people are going to be pretty shocked by how the league ends. Well, I think that people will be surprised by how the league plays out.
Right.
Well,
go ahead, DB.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, first of all, scrim bucks are incredibly valuable. I've used them to purchase at least 5 yachts. But I mean, to that point, I mean, that's the attitude you have to have, right? I would be surprised to meet the person who wakes up every day and goes, today I aspire to mediocrity. A good 5th to 6th place, that's where I want to be. That's really just, unless, of course, you were one of the more tortured franchises in the NBA that doesn't have a star player. But, short of that, yeah, I mean, that's the attitude you have to have, right? You don't want to go into work every day and go, man, you know what? 7th, this sounds good. Yeah, I mean, so,
well, I mean, yes, of course you're gonna I mean, it's good that you said that you want to shoot for the playoffs. If you said that you wanted to just you think you can win the league, I mean that's like a huge statement too. So I think given that you said the playoffs, I mean that's cool. I mean I think that's I don't know if that's a reasonable goal or not, or if that's something that you think is more of a reasonable goal than just saying that you want to win the entire thing, which is maybe something you want to.
Of course I want to win. Like,
of course.
Like I don't want to come into work saying time to be like ZP was saying 5th or 6th. I don't want to come in saying I want to be the second best.
Of course. Yeah.
But I think that with this team, we definitely have the talent to push for playoffs and do some work there.
Right. Okay. And what's interesting too about your team is that you're going to get Super and Sinatra like midway through too. So how are you guys going to have that? How are you going to work that transition in? Or how do you think the team's going to do that? Are you guys going to just continually practice with them? But of course, obviously the games are going to, take place without them and just try to have as smooth of a transition going into it? Or is it just going to be one of those things where, if things are going well, just with our current lineup, then we're just going to roll with them until we need to?
I mean, Brad or Sefi, as people know him, I guess, always says this, but if we're 20-0, there's no reason to switch anything up, right? We want to go into the league with the roster that we think is going to win the most. And if we're already winning, there's no reason to really switch anything. That said, Sinatra and Super, both incredibly talented players. So I personally have only had the opportunity to watch Super from like a comms point of view, like being able to understand everything that's going on in the game without just watching a stream. Only once before, I would say like 2 weeks ago, because when I was trying out actively with the team, it was just the 6 people or the 7 people that were in Vegas with the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Nevix actually had to go to Canada to get his visa sorted out, and so we had Super step in and fill up for that flex role. And one of the things I noticed immediately, this guy is like, his comms are so incredibly good. Like this guy, he notices everything that's happening in the game. He's a really smart player. He jokes about it in game. Actually, he says he's the most cerebral player in the league. But like Super and Sinatra, yeah, high IQ. These guys are very, very good players, very talented, very smart, and like, if need be, they'll step in. If not, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, personally, I'd like to see him. He's got style, man. That kid's got style.
I want to add one thing.
Okay, sure.
Sinatra's obviously best known for like Tracer, Zarya, Genji, and not really much else, I would say. But I guess you could add Soldier in there. But Super legitimately plays any hero in the game. So I think that's one thing that we can, add in, is that if we're struggling in a specific role, maybe he's the one that has to step in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I can attest to that too, where even you think back to Super's glory days with, back with Hammers and then later LG Evil and that entire saga, is that he would be the one person where you'd go, you don't really see a Reinhardt main as he was back then suddenly swap the Tracer and then actually do anything with it. Usually the standard was, it's at the end of the game and the Reinhardt has gone Tracer. Look at him go. He's blinking on the point, not killing anything. But then Super would be the one player who would do that sort of swap and then kill 2-3 people. And you go, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, we've obviously been holding off on talking about the preseason. So why don't we jump into some preseason Overwatch League and kind of get into just everything that we've seen just this last 2 days. There's obviously going to be another 2 days. But I think we've seen a lot. First off, just for folks that maybe haven't been watching or maybe wondering why, like on day one, that the Shock, Harsha's San Francisco Shock team played twice. Philadelphia Fusion team is not participating in the preseason because they're having a lot of issues getting all their players like just here to the U.S. with visas and everything. So unfortunately, we won't be able to see them. But come regular season, of course, we'll get a chance to see them. That just gives you guys just more chances, right? Just to kind of show off, which we got a chance to see yesterday. So before we get into the matches, let's just talk about some of the stuff around it. Just all the production stuff and things like that. First off, it wasn't on the Twitch stream, which, just like caused this big old discussion, everybody wondering what's going on. So of course it affects viewership. Obviously, there's a reason for it, guys. I mean, it's not like, yeah, we're just gonna only do Overwatch League on MLG.TV. No, that's not gonna be the case. There's definitely something going on. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it or not, or I don't know, but
I know Richard Lewis. I mean, I don't know who his sources are or anything, but he basically said that his sources tell him that a broadcast deal with Twitch is already completed, and they're just looking for secondary people. So I wouldn't. Okay. I mean, I think he's generally pretty trustworthy. I wouldn't worry too much, is what I'd say.
Yeah. So they're obviously looking for more channels, to do the Overwatch League on, and having it on Twitch is kind of hard to sell to possible competitors of Twitch when it's just sitting there, looking pretty on Twitch, right?
One thing I'll say that I think is complicated that is worth noting when you get into these situations is that we are entering a very unprecedented time in esports in regards to content and content marketing, because the traditional model for selling content in the past was sort of, for TV stations, was that people would visit a TV station because your program drove people to your particular station. So, you would have NBC and ABC fight over certain NFL programming because if you had an NFL game on a particular day, that would drive people to your network. Yeah. And the goal, I think, for organizations going forward is eventually to get that same level of content payment for things like esports programs, where whether it be a Twitch, a YouTube, a Facebook, and now Facebook has been trying to pump up their streaming game. The idea is to get that same level of payment. It's complicated in online gaming, though, because Twitch has such an advantage for being the first one in the door, where essentially Twitch can still sort of ready the argument and go, well, we don't want to pay you quite as much as that, because unlike the standard setup here, many people only get their gaming content via Twitch. It'd be as if you had a satellite plan that only had NBC and a cable plan that only had ABC, and then like a lot of people only had satellite. So these things are a little bit complicated. I'm glad that Overwatch is on Twitch because it clearly does have the largest platform in terms of active current gaming community people. I'd say that in the future, things like Facebook and YouTube can definitely be competitive. But I'm happy it's on Twitch, but I wouldn't be surprised if into the future there's a scenario where you don't get OWL, or you don't get, say, a different esports program that decides not to go on Twitch. We've had that a few instances already. So just be aware that whether it be Overwatch or something else, the idea that something won't be on Twitch at some point isn't something you should be too shocked by, because this is going to be a transitionary period for content, I feel like.
And one of the things that you have to note is that the only thing you'd be lacking without Twitch is Twitch emotes. You'll probably still, I mean, if it's online, you're probably still going to have a chat. Probably going to be just as good of a broadcast, I'd say. You don't have that sense of community, maybe, but you are also helping add more money to this league, to players, to pretty much everybody involved, right? So it should be, in theory, a better product at the end of the day, but you just wouldn't have that same site that you're used to, I guess.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that you'd be missing if you weren't on Twitch is really just the Twitch community, just just the eyes and the ranking system on Twitch. Like when there's a huge esport event, organically you get, I don't even know what percentage of that 200,000 or 300,000, when there's huge esport events, how much of that actually just comes because it's number one on the entire site, and you're getting that type of placement in terms of the site. So I think that's the biggest thing that they offer, and that's a huge thing. I mean, with how many people are concurrently watching on Twitch every second, even like this late at night. So it's super important to try to max that out, because if we're on MLG, like just right now, MLG.TV, right? I bet the numbers were a quarter of what it probably would be on Twitch, and that has a lot to do with there's just not these people that come across it.
One thing I would say here, though, is that we don't really know what the numbers are, obviously, because of the way it was set up. But I would say if you look at even just interaction metrics like what we're seeing on Reddit, where you have a billion comments for the preseason, it's a very good sign. It means that there were a lot of people watching this, even not being on Twitch. So it does bode fairly well for the premiere, if it is in fact on Twitch come January, because I would feel like you would get all those viewers and more. I don't think the hype train would stop at the preseason. I think if anything, it would intensify, at least for the first few weeks of
that's
season
fair.
1.
A little bit of a build up. Okay, I can see that. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. One thing they didn't have in the very beginning of day one was chat. And I was like, come on, dude. I mean, you got to at least have chat. You know, you don't have to show us how many viewers there are, but if we can just sit there and just watch without chatting, that, you know, chat is a huge thing that you have to have, you know, just to kind of generate hype and just have some type of interaction, right? So I was happy to see that they eventually turned it on, and you know they kept it on obviously in day 2. So that was cool. You know, it was definitely a good experience. But let's talk about the stage, man. That stage is sweet. Like the entire stage is this giant LED, basically. You know, with obviously different sections and things like that. But it's like BlizzCon StarCraft 2 stage, but next level. You know, like even better than that. But yeah, what do you guys think of it?
So my favorite part was that I think Hastro tweeted that this is what my $20 million helped build.
Seriously, man.
Dude, that stage is insane. Like, I don't know if they showed this on like the broadcast, but when you're there, every transition between maps, they just play like a huge widescreen version of the map on all of the stage, and it's like breathtaking. It's such a cool experience, and I think that I know you had concerns that you brought up earlier, and we'll probably discuss them later in the show, but I think that the live viewing experience has actually been quite good, other than the fact that you're probably sitting there. If you want to watch all the matches, it's probably around 7 hours.
Yeah,
but
that's a ton.
I thought the live viewing experience from dipping in and out of there has been really sick.
Oh, that's definitely great. ZP. Those LEDs,
I mean,
man.
the production stuff, I mean, what more you can say? It's an incredibly good-looking set. I would say it's easily on par with some of the other really high-end productions we've seen, like, say, E-League for what you have there, but I would actually put it a step above just because they were able to specialize specifically in Overwatch and put together a lot of assets and graphics that correspond to team colors and all the rest. And this is where the fact that you do have these geo-localized teams that have very definitive graphic profiles and what they were pushing for the league, as opposed to sort of the random mishmash of different branding that you get from endemics, does play pretty well into Blizzard's favor here, because of course, as a team signing up for the league, you have to pick a color scheme, you have to pick everything else, and you can't pick something that someone else already has. So there's a lot to be said in the setup here in terms of team branding that actually made a lot of things for the stage production look as good as it did. It was a multi-part process there. It's easy to underrate all that, but the part where you come in, you go, oh, this team's color is yellow, this team's color is red, and now we can make one side of the stage yellow and the other side red. That's stuff that you can't always do with a more traditional esports setup.
Yeah, I mean, this is so flexible. Like, you literally can program it to do whatever you want. And you know, like you said with the maps, so they showed a lot of it today. You know, I noticed it a few times last time, but today, like, we got a good look at it, like for, you know, Anubis and Dorado and things like that. Maybe we can add another 20 million and just like completely encase the arena, like, so that we feel like we're IMAX actually in the map, like all around us. That'd be freaking amazing. No, but it is pretty like, it just, like, my jaw dropped. At first, you know, I just saw the colors. I'm just like, oh, that's all the stage is. And then all of a sudden, they went to the map, and it was just like, oh, damn, that's like.
And I imagine they have even more planned. You know, they have that top-down mini-map view. Maybe they do something with that on one of the side panels.
They
put like giant portraits of the heroes and like their ult charge and their health and everything like that on both sides of the screen. So, you know, who knows really? Like, I think the sky's the limit because it's such a huge stage. But I don't know. There's just potential to be amazing.
Dude, they could even have just like almost like the little character portraits with who has ultimates, maybe like above the actual people, like on the stage.
Oh no, they actually do have that.
Do they have that? I didn't even see that. Wow, that's cool.
It's like these huge, like vertical, I would say.
Really?
Portraits of the characters. They have the ults. They have the health.
Oh damn, like that's awesome. I didn't
fire
realize
meter.
That. Yeah. That's cool. So some changes to the spectator too. You know, just some you know, things I think were upgraded or maybe cleaned up a little bit from World Cup. I would say the first thing with the spectator itself is the outline. There's an actual outline or stroke that's around the health bar, which is really cool, because I think the health bar was one of the things that was very hard to see or sometimes confusing, because it was all the same color. It was white, and you know, everybody's health bar was white, and it's, you know, one of the difficult things to make out. So now at least you know what team. Like, if it's the blue team, then it's like a blue outline. If it's a white team, it's white. I noticed that like instantly, so that was actually a nice touch. What do you guys think?
I was going to let Harsha say, but yeah, I mean, in general, like I said, going back to it, I mean, production, across the board, production level has been pretty high with it, minus complexity striking at the very end of today's stream. But yeah,
striking, God, yeah.
Hey man, actually, that entire bug could have happened a better time in Overwatch, where it just happens right when they added the hero that hacks, and it's the hero that hacks that's causing the crashes. There is actually some incredible beam synergy there, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything you could say about the production other than it was great. The only thing I'd probably say, and I know it's a work in progress and has continually been, is that I think that I would like to see more detailed stats in terms of what's going on. I don't think the stats game is really there just yet, but that's also one of the most complicated parts that will be worked on over time.
Yep.
So I guess the thing I'd add is that I think that the spectator client is definitely a huge improvement over what we used to have essentially. The one thing I'd say is that I think that there still needs to be a bit more separation between specific colors, like I'd say like white and yellow or blue and white. Even like things like having Mayhem play on Anubis with their home color, where it's just yellow on yellow. I think that one of the suggestions that I actually tweeted, which isn't as helpful of a forum for actually giving advice, but I think that they should have like a night and a day mode for every map.
I agree,
and it might make spectating specific colors easier, and they could choose it, and it would only really affect the spectators. It wouldn't do anything in game, right? So it should be a better experience for everybody, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's even one of the things I might have mentioned in like my laundry list to Jason after World Cup is like lighting, right? Like this one had a little bit more to do with just the strokes around the characters generally, which by the way, I think might be a tiny bit thinner, and it's like been like a huge improvement from what I saw before. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'm just like used to it. But yeah, I think the lighting is huge because I think a lot of the issues, at least with the white and just having to like create even more outlines and things like that is just because it's shaded, in a lot of areas on the maps, especially like Anubis with, just like where it's covered a little bit and, it's like a sunny map, right? And even like Dorado and things like that. So if they could change the lighting, for us and where we can just see the brighter colors, I think that would definitely help. Some of the text I think probably needs to, be looked at too. Just, I think there's one in particular, like the time,
purple.
Well, just the time is just like so hard to read when it's like blue and it has a stroke around it too. So I mean, it's a little things, things that easily are, I'm sure, like super easy to change.
The one thing I'd say is that for the gladiators, having the gladiators eliminations in purple is really bad because the way encoding works for streams where I'm sure it looked fine if you were in person watching live feed, but as soon as you put any form of compression to send it out to a stream, which of course you have to do the broadcast if it's on anything other than traditional TV, the issue that you're going to run into is that anything on the spectrum of reds, in which case like that shade from Gladiators like is very close to red, is going to be very difficult to read, but it's actually worse because it's an even like dimmer shade of red. So
read like what do you mean?
Well, no, it's purple, but like look at the color wheel, like it's very
okay. The red portion of the purple. I got you.
Right. Well, purple is just close to red. It's just how like encoders work. So the purple was incredibly unclear to read. Where I was just sitting like slightly back, and I know I'm not a guy with the best vision, but I'm looking at that and going, "Wow, that is really hard to read the text when a purple name is eliminated."
I think it's one of those things where you don't actually have to use the same exact color, like as long as it's kind of green, you can make it a little brighter. Everything can be just like a tiny bit brighter and more readable, and then we know who it is. Like as long as it's the same color, I think it's fine. So right now they're using so when the Valiant was up there, oh my god, that green is like, that green is that type of green that's supposed to be kind of hard to or it catches your eye, but it's hard to actually focus on, that green, right? So I think that's maybe something to look at. One of the coolest things, though, I have to say that they added, and I mean, thank God Widow is in the metagame, right? Because we got the slow-mo highlights, which were probably one of the coolest things I saw after day one when they were showing like a recap of the day, and seeing some of those awesome Widow moments. So that was something I don't think we didn't see a slow-mo highlight in World Cup, right? Is this something new? Like
no, we did see.
Did we see it like a lot though? Like maybe only like a couple of times, right?
A handful of times.
Yeah.
What they did, I think, is they added something to the client where, in game you can like, I don't know the specifics because obviously I'm not a spectator or an observer rather, but I think you can like click on a specific kill in the kill feed and like the game has like a specific algorithm that lets you spectate in like the best way they'd put it in slow-mo. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and maybe it's like a manual thing, but from what was described to me, I think that's what it was, which is, it's been really cool so far. We've seen like really cool pulse bombs, we've seen cool Widow, headshots. So I'm definitely happy with that.
Yeah, I know. I think it's added a really cool element to just the replay system and just entertainment value, right? Like we don't catch those. Sometimes those things just happen so fast that that kind of slow-mo, then speed up slow-mo, that's just like really, really cool effects. Okay, and the desk. What do you guys think about just talent and how they're doing it? 4-man desk. Obviously, Chris being the host the whole time, and then a rotation of everybody else, whether they're casting or they're on the floor, and like with Zoe.
Well, I know this isn't the end of the talent. I'm sure more people are going to be brought into Overwatch League, and it's going to be a really sick venture. But so far they have good talent. They've been rotating people in and out. Obviously, hope to see ZP there in January, but I can't really complain. They got really good guys there. Also, my boys Sideshow and Bren, plug to them.
Yeah.
I think as far as desk goes, it's really interesting to see how the problem has been tackled over time with how to make a desk segment really impactful while keeping it as quick as possible. And part of that is just, I think there has been a better job being done over time with just mixing in replays on the desk and, keeping people visually stimulated. Because one of the things you want to avoid when you're doing desk work is that you don't want to have a situation where just over talk forever and there's not like rhyme or reason and you're stuck filling. I think so far, it's been a pretty good job of just keeping things focused and on target.
Yeah, I think Chris has been doing an awesome job too. Like
He's a great host.
We've been very blessed with just our hosts. I mean, Alex did an amazing job too, leading up to this, and Chris, I think is just like a million times better than obviously when he was at Contenders, being almost doing it for the first time, really. Like maybe it's the second time then, but this time I don't know, it stood out to me, and that's like a big deal when your host stands out to you. So.
He's really like I'd say like a playful guy. It's like it makes the segment entertaining. Yeah,
totally. And he just sounds great too, so that helps, of course. Let's get into the matches though. We just kind of dig into some of these preseason games, and let's just start off with a question. Do you think everybody's playing at are they playing their hardest?
So the way I've been describing it is I think everybody's playing at 100%, but they're not playing at 110%, Whereas in the regular season, you're going to see people going all the way out. But like, I'll definitely say this. Everybody here wants to win the preseason. It's their first impression amongst the fans. Like, even though, yes, these matches don't mean anything, they do, people are going to meme about them. They're going to be talking about them. Like, I think everybody here is trying, and nobody here is really, saying, I don't really care. Now, at the end of the day, are they doing everything that they can to win? Probably not. And there is that rule I think that people have spoken about on the desk where you do have to play every player on your team. So maybe not every team is going to be able to play their best roster all the time. But so far,
if you don't mind explaining that, I myself was just like, I just learned that too, and I think there's probably a lot of other people that don't know this rule. So what exactly is this rule where you have to play everybody?
So I believe every single person on your roster that is eligible to play and that is, in the United States and able to play has to play one match between their 2 preseason games. Now, I think that they don't have to exactly play every match, or they don't have to play in every series, because I know Numlock didn't come out to play in our series against Valiant, and I know that XQC, maybe I missed it because I wasn't watching all of the games for Field today, but I don't think he played today against Outlaws. And so I believe that they just have to play once in one of their 2 games.
Okay, all right. I think that's definitely a good clarification, because I didn't realize they had to do that. It's kind of, I guess it's cool that they have to do it. I mean, definitely you have to make roster decisions based on that too. So is that going to be a rule during regular season too, or
no?
There's no way.
Okay, I was going to say, man, it's like I knew nothing about this. That would be crazy.
that would be a ridiculous rule where just like
12 guys, you gotta all play.
I understand that you have Tom Brady on your roster, but you do have that backup that's sitting there. So if you could just bench Tom Brady for the first
he
quarter
got traded,
of this game.
dude. I don't even know who the backup is now.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to think of that because I was gonna say it's like you just have to put a Jimmy G for a little bit. It's like, well, no, you can't do that anymore. But It's fine. We've established over time that Tom Brady is an immortal vampire who will be destroying the New York Jets until he's at least 55.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into the matches. So, San Francisco Shock, your team ended up playing the Florida Mayhem in the first match of the preseason. You guys fared really well and ended up winning 3-1. Actually won the first 3 games, and then you decided, we'll just be nice. Let's give them 1 game at the very end there. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that. Like, do you guys feel super confident going into it? And, just what happened there?
So I think 2 things that you have to note is that, first of all, Florida actually got here about a week ago, I would say. So they've been doing what they can with that week, but they haven't gotten here a week ago. The second thing is that we actually, because we weren't supposed to play that match, that actually wasn't our map pool. So we were actually prepping for a different set of maps entirely.
Wow. Okay.
And basically we were confirmed to play them, I think, 2 days before. So we had to buckle down and really prep for that match as well. So definitely not the best circumstances for either team, but I think that given what you saw, like we were able to adapt and do pretty well. And even though they weren't our maps, we came out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I think one person that stood out to me, like for sure, even just all of day one, was Baby Bay. I think he was playing great, especially on the first match. I felt like he was on fire. His Widow was, making huge impacts on some most, like actually a couple of the maps, and then even McCree. He'd just be cleaning up with McCree on the end of some maps. So, yeah, I mean, I've always known about Baby Bay, but I would say this is the first time I was just like, my eyes were like, wow, he's actually really good.
So from his days on Kongarna, I'd always known that he was a really talented player, but I didn't know just exactly what his impact was in game. Yeah. This guy's like he's kind of our main shot caller. Him alongside Dak are pretty much the 2 most vocal people on our team. He's really good at like being the alpha, stepping up and telling everybody what they need to be doing, what heroes we need to be playing, et cetera, et cetera. And he's really grown into that team mentality where he understands, how our team should be playing to win rather than how he should be, what resources he should be getting, right? So he's really matured in that sense, and I think that he's been a really good asset for our team, and everybody's been rallying around him. Actually, one of the things that I think Sleepy said the other day, and I want to talk about him as well, but Sleepy basically said, because the team, we have a kind of a big mix of players. They didn't all get along at first, and I believe it was yesterday, Sleepy was like, hey man, we actually should have just been playing the way you wanted us to play this entire time. I'm glad we, got that into our head. So, these guys have, I think, figured it out, and we're going to try and work that combination in. Sleepy, another guy that I think people were mentioning on social media, played really well. He was kind of the quiet carry of our team, I would say. He's fragging out with that Zenyatta, and hope to see more of that.
So one thing I note here too, and this is more on a Mayhem note, but I knew that series was going to be good for Shock as soon as we saw Logix having the spread out and go to other heroes. And it's not that he was playing a bad Widow by any means, but if you want to talk about areas of strength, putting Logix in a Widow v Widow duel against Baby Bay, who's also really good at Widow, is a very nice situation to be in as Shock when, if you look at the MO for Misfits, is that when they crush teams, when they look their strongest, when they looked really good in contenders, they did it when Logix was just playing unworldly good on Tracer. And it's not taking away from how Logix plays on other heroes, but if there is, a list of standard deviations where how good is Logix relative to the average player, his Tracer, when Misfits was doing well, was much, much higher than any other hero he had. So anytime right now Misfits or Mayhem has to run Logix on something other than Tracer, they're taking a big hit from what really has been their only established way of winning games with this roster. Because, of course, if you look back before the roster shuffle that took out Reinforce for Swoosh and Nevix for Logix, they weren't doing very well with their old roster. And the biggest change that they had, which suddenly propelled them to being a better team again, was that they had to shut down Tracer. So now we're in a meta where you can't really run Tracer all the time the way that you could previously. And also, frankly, people have learned to deal with Tracer better. So you can't one-trick her to that degree. And so far, anytime Misfits or Mayhem has had to go out and now run, well, it's really mostly Misfits, but now, of course, we have a little bit of Mayhem data, has had to go out and run without a Tracer, it doesn't really work out well for them.
So basically, what I'd say is that at Misfits' best, Logix, like you said, Logix was that shutdown Tracer. He was having ridiculous statistics. He was playing really well throughout all of Contenders Online. I guess the issue is that Logix isn't playing to what he's expected to be playing of, and I mean the problem with that is obviously what we expect Logix to be is some ungodly tracer, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I mean definitely an issue for them. We'll see how it shapes up. I think people always were saying that Logix had land jitters. Whether or not that's the case, I can't really say for sure. But he's going to have 40 games to work that out if that is the case, right? So yeah, I think he can improve. It depends on how the meta looks and what's going to go on with the roles on Mayhem.
Yeah, I mean, and just to clarify real quick here, I'm not hating on Logix. I think Logix has still been playing really well. I think as you say, Harsha, I think it's unreasonable to expect a player to play like, a god-crushing peasant in every single game. The issue is that Misfits has been, and now Mayhem, they've been very, well, the thing is, what I'm talking about, most of the history I'm drawing on is when they were Misfits, so that's still accurate. They are Mayhem now. But anyways, when you look at them, they've just been very inconsistent across the board at the rest of the roles where because they've made fundamental errors in ult economy in basically every game, because certain players will show up and then take a map off. It feels like they had to rely on that consistent rock and Logix, and to another degree, Manitin at times where you had like Monster Diva games to sort of pull them through otherwise rough situations. And the reality is they're going to have to dig into the other players that aren't always playing up to the level that they should be and make that more even, so you're not relying on one particular player to just play ungodly good to win games, because that's not sustainable, especially over a full season.
Well, I mean, it leads back to the fact that they have 6 players. It's like, when you said Logic had to go to Widow, well, they've tried Zeb at Widow before in the past, and they just don't have a Widow specialist. So they're in this position that, most teams were in months ago, leading in the Contenders, or even before that, where it's just like, you don't have the best players in the world playing their thing. So as long as, you have this very versatile team, which was always how we've described Misfits, then, you could compete. But now, we've got 12-man rosters now. Now we've got people subbing in between games, and now you're going to get completely exposed. If you don't have that, and a 6-man team right now is going to be exposed like week to week. So really worried about the Florida Mayhem, especially because I'm in Florida, so I'm gonna be like, this is the team I'm gonna be watching, so I'm hoping like mid-season they definitely pick up some, they realize what the holes are, they make some good pickups, but right now it's not looking good, man. And I don't even think it's necessarily just like they're disappointing. They're just not built for Overwatch League.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Is that the other issue that you have, and it goes back to the point we made earlier about coaching and mid-season adjustments. You don't exactly have a lot of pieces to adjust with for Misfits, which means that their ability to adapt to other teams is going to be poor, and the ability for other teams to game plan around them and know exactly what they're going to be seeing on any given map is going to be very high. So, as a general rule, Mayhem is not well positioned for OWL right now, and unless they can just channel immense performances out of every single player, which, while possible, is fairly unlikely, I think it's going to be very rough for them until you get to a mid-season signing window where they can add in players that will allow them to shore up some holes and allow them to be less predictable than how they are right now.
And I think if you have to add in kind of a saving grace to this team, it does have to be that, even though I think Tavik underperformed yesterday to an extent, I mean, I don't really think his Genji was going off as well as it used to. I think like the saving grace here is that Tavik is one of the most flexible players in the game, does have a very expansive hero pool, and maybe that can be kind of their way back into this season of Overwatch League.
Yeah, I would say the issue there, though, is that I think in early Overwatch, being a generalist that could play really well was very valuable. But now we've hit the era where people are approaching many thousands of hours of played inside the game, and people who have put more of a focus on one facet of the game have started to hit like some very truly transcendent levels of play. So the bar has been raised here, where I don't even think it's necessarily an issue where, well, is Tavik playing less or playing less good than he used to? I don't think that's the issue at all. I think the issue is that you have players that have come in that have just grinded out one individual facet Overwatch. Like they've grinded out this one area, whether it be they've played 1 billion hours of Genji, or they've played 1 million hours on Tracer, or they've gone into the soldier route. They went full Defran, whatever it might be. You have these players that. Yeah, I didn't realize that statement could be taken so many different ways. But
okay.
The point is that generalists are not necessarily rewarded in Overwatch. Versatility is not necessarily rewarded in Overwatch. Being damn good in one role, that's rewarded in Overwatch, at least on the competitive level.
It is, but I have a feeling that it's going to advance past that too. And we saw a little bit of that actually against with Dallas and Houston today. We saw Dallas have to flex into a weird type of comp, right? With Taimu playing Winston, like how many times have we seen that? And so that's the kind of thing where Tvik would be incredibly valuable. But to your point, you still have to be like exceptionally good at one of the roles, and then just have that ability to be able to flex, in case that you guys do need it for half a map or something like that, just to finish out a match. So I think his talent, his toolkit is still very, very valuable. It's just, I think the team's just not built well around. I don't know if Tvik, that type of player, that versatile player, really should be the carry superstar type of player. And that's kind of how we talk about Tvik, and that's kind of like how the community talks about Tvik. And I just don't know if that's really his role. Like, I don't know if that's really the right way or the right position he should be on a team. Maybe he should be more of like, the support role, or more of a support player, not a support, meaning like healer, but more of like a secondary.
What Taimu's done.
Yeah. Kind of what Taimu's done. I mean, he stepped back a little bit, and, it's been amazing for him, like lots of stress effect has taken so much pressure off of him. And then it's allowed the entire team, I think, to evolve even to a higher point.
And if you want to draw parallels, I would say that people were expecting Logics to be that effect for Tvik, but I would say that Tvik does have a better, kind of resume on those projectile heroes than Taimu does. So his job, in theory, should be easier. But we just need to make sure that Logics can perform to that effect level.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so my previous statement wasn't misinterpreted in any way. I'm not saying you need to be a good one trick. I'm saying you need to have a field of focus that's fairly narrow, like a good hero pool of like 3 to 4 heroes that you're playing at a really exceptional level. The issue that Tvik has had in recent times is that he's had to bounce all around, where he's gone projectile end of the spectrum. He was playing a lot of hit scan prior to Logic joining the team. And he even said, wow, going back to Genji has been rough because I wasn't playing Genji for, such a long time. So it's difficult to bounce back and forth between the full spectrum of DPS. It's even harder to reliably go from like DPS to flex depending on it. It's impossible to do these things, but as of right now, it's more likely for someone to succeed and have a bigger impact on the game if they're a god at, say, 2 to 3 heroes versus 80% on 6 to 8.
Right. Okay, well, why don't we move on? We spent a lot of time on that first one. So LA Valiant, this was this is a really, really good series. I felt like you guys were very evenly matched. LA ended up taking it in the tiebreaker, ended up 3-2, but I thought it was really great. You guys went back and forth. What did you think of this match, Harsha?
So I will say that I think at the end of the day, the fault on this one falls on myself and Brad and Legit. For what ended up happening is we had to play a tiebreaker on Lijiang. We haven't actually prepped for that map in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we had another pool to focus on, and just kind of ignored Lijiang, and it ended up biting us in the ass. The guys kind of we were running stuff that I'm not sure we would have run this week if we were to prepare for it. The other thing that I'll say though is that I think you could kind of see the signs of fatigue settling in.
Yeah.
We kind of through the Junkertown match we were in a good position on New Money as well, but couldn't capitalize, and so. It was a really great match. Valiant's going to be a very good team this season, but I definitely think that we're going to be, we're going to look way better next time the two of us play.
I'd say from Valiant, it's interesting to see them kind of fix some of their DPS woes, where the reality is that I would say if anything was really hurting Immortals when they were Immortals, of course now Valiant, in previous outings, is that I don't think not Silk Thread, but I don't think Grim Reality and Agilities were playing up to their usual level, especially in the latter parts of that. I understand Immortals is trying a lot of things out, but I don't think you could say enough about the breath of fresh air that Silk Thread was for the team, where
Yes.
Silk Thread is a consistent DPS carry of the likes that Immortals, now Valiant, has never had in the past. Right? I think they had it when Agilities is like playing out of his mind, but Agilities definitely regressed a little bit towards the end. So I think that is the biggest upgrade for me when I look at the Valiant side of things.
So what I noticed about Silk Thread is I'd say he's a really intelligent player just from watching that match. The guy was deciding at some point he was like, yeah, I'm not going to be playing Overwatch professionally. I'm actually going to college. Maybe that's why he's such a big brain. But I was watching his soldiery. The guy knew exactly when to ultimate. How he should be using it, where he should be most effective, and seeing that kind of that patience and that intelligence. I thought it was really impressive, especially for a guy who's never actually played on a stage like this, as far as I know.
Yeah, he was saying he was so nervous during the first match that he was like literally shaking on stage. So it was actually really cool to see him perform. And yeah, the thing about Silk Thread is like, sometimes when we're talking about Soon and talk about agilities and even Grim to extent, we kind of like reminisce, about like how they are, and sometimes that affects actually how we judge them even now. And the thing about Silk Thread is like he's good like right now, like Silk Thread, even just like on where he is in the ladder, and just like even if you measure that to some extent, I mean he's at the top of the ladder. I mean there's a reason why he's at the top of the ladder too, and so his abilities right now I feel like are more current, like, and you can measure that like just by looking at him. Where the other guys, I have a hard time sometimes, to be honest. Like I have a hard time sometimes when I see Soon and really not seeing the old Soon, and just how amazing he used to be, compared to. He's still good. He's still great. It's just like before he was relatively just way above everybody, right? So
when you're on top, I mean, the key thing I'd say for Silk Thread is that really you have to get to the down and nitty gritty to be number one on the ladder, which is you add Steve-O to your friends list and you see when he's queuing.
Come on.
And then when he's not, when he's in queue, you don't queue. And then afterwards, you're fine. Like you protect your MMR.
Yeah, got it.
That actually could be a thing. I don't know. I mean, these are strategies people would
meta. It's ladder meta, right? Like Steve-O is heavily involved in ladder meta.
There's legitimately a meta for those sorts of things.
Okay.
But other than that, I mean, look, you don't get to be top of the ladder without having some level of mechanics and consistency that most other players don't have.
Yeah.
Period.
One thing I'd say about Soon in particular, I think is that he's kind of taken that other role we've been talking about with Timo and with Vic, in that he's more of a sort of supportive tracer, and by that I mean he kind of plays around his team. Takes the orb, duels the other tracer, make sure they don't actually do anything to his backline. And to that extent, I think he's been doing a good job, but he's definitely not going to be as flashy. He's not going to be getting as many kills. He's not going to look like Effect, basically.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one, Seoul versus Shanghai. So this one, I don't think anybody was surprised that, Seoul ended up sweeping them 4-0. But we did see some, definitely got a good look at the Shanghai team and just what kind of talent they have on there. In particular, I think, Dia had some amazing moments, right? Just with some of his Widow plays, and then Roshan, I think, was just like super solid for his team. But any other people really stand out? I mean, the Seoul team we know so well, right? I don't think we need to talk about just the superstars on the Seoul team. But
these guys on Seoul, I'm actually really happy. People like Fleta, Munchkin.
Yep.
These guys are Wikid as well. Although Wikid probably didn't have had as hard of a time as the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Fleta literally had a meme in Korea where they call it 1v11 in every game because
seriously,
he was on Flash Lux, which just season in, season out, the worst team in Apex, and finally gets his chance to play on a great team, and he does work. And same thing with Munchkin, although definitely not to the 1v11 extent. He's a really great player. Didn't have much luck finding team, especially kind of because of his shadier past, I would say. But the guy definitely, he was able to find his role, and he's going to be a big part of this team. And we saw Wikid also having those highlights. So I'm really glad for these guys. They're going to have an incredible season. The other thing I'd say, go ahead, actually.
Oh, no, I thought you were fishing, but I mean, continue to go ahead, because the other thing I was going to say is that this is one game I have to go catch up on the VOD on, because I got bogged down in doing errands prior to my upcoming trip. So, this is one where...
I mean, it was a 4-0, but there were really competitive moments, so it was closer than 4-0, let's just put it that way.
One thing I'd say is that I think probably D is quite a low sense player, because from what I was watching, his tracking on Tracer looked it didn't look very good to me. But then when he moved on to that Widow, he was having like really high moments. So
yeah.
Definitely a talented player. And when they moved Undead to that Tracer and they moved D away from it, they were looking pretty good. I think Tyrong said this earlier, and you just also brought it up. Their tank line is pretty good on Shanghai. You know, people really rag on this team because they didn't pick up any of the MY players or miraculous youngsters who were actually the best team in China and recently disbanded. But they should at least see some success if they're able to build on this tank line, and I think that they could be decent. Although I think that if you pick up MY, you probably have a better roster than this one.
If they could just take MY's DPS like players and their support players, they'd be sick. They'd be like disgustingly sick. So, yeah, we'll see how this Shanghai team ends up. How many players do they have right now? They have
8, I believe.
Oh, 8. Okay, so they still have some room. I mean, obviously those MY players are free agents right now, so we'll have to see. They have to wait a little bit of time until they could get picked up. But yeah, so Seoul 4-0, no surprise there. The first match today was an upset. So we actually had the LA Gladiators and the London Spitfire, and the Gladiators ended up winning in a tiebreaker, winning 3-2. Our boys Surefour and Hydration, those guys ended up playing super well. I mean, they played a very clean series, I have to say. I mean, like nobody expected them to actually beat the Spitfire, given that these are Apex champions, right? So, I mean, it wasn't
one thing.
Yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
I think the issue with today, at least the first 2 matches, is that these are the matches probably most adversely affected by the rule to swap people in and out in preseason. So I think it's difficult to judge too much on this. I mean, obviously, LA Gladiators looked better than I think a lot of people gave them credit for. That much is true. The London Spitfire was definitely a tale of 2 teams between do you have Kongdu, but more Kongdu people playing or more GC Busan playing or people playing? So I don't really know. I feel like it wasn't really London's true form, but it was still a positive sign for LA, I would say.
It's a good storyline, at least, yeah.
On one hand, I think that I brought this up when I was speaking to Doa actually earlier today, and I told him I think that Gladiators actually have a chance of winning maps against GC Busan, because from scrims at least they'd been struggling against us, whereas I would say that roster with Birdring and Rascal and the Kongdu guys, and then Nuss and Fury. Actually, Nuss might have been on Kongdu, but anyways, those guys looked actually really good and looked like they hadn't dropped a beat from when they were playing in Apex. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Maybe Busan just isn't good in scrims, and maybe they weren't trying as hard as they should be, or maybe you're right, and Gladiators is actually just way better than expected. But I think that you give these guys time, and they'll adjust. These guys won Apex. Don't think you need to worry too much. And I do have to say, I think there's something to be said about Bishop not playing the Kongdu roster despite going down 2-1. And maybe it has to do with the switching rules, maybe it doesn't, but not really sure why he decided to stick with GC for the last map.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if this team doesn't take after like a few weeks, or maybe even before the regular season starts, they don't figure it out. It is 2 separate teams having to join together and figure out a chemistry, between the existing teams. And, I don't know if you look at it from the standpoint of the bases Kongdu and you add GC, or if it's GC and you add, Kongdu. So they definitely have to spend some time figuring that out. One thing that LA did do, from a strategic standpoint, they broke out triple DPS a lot. So what are your thoughts of that, Harsha? Because Surefour was talking about that in the post interview.
I don't think it's going to be the last time you see DPS, and it's obviously not going to be like that classic rogue style that we saw with Tracer, Soldier, Genji. But I think that you will be able to see it, especially on maps like Junkertown, where it's kind of a map where you can run a lot of different things. I like
quad DPS on that one.
So people are talking about how RNG it is, but I actually really like that map, and I think that
are you serious?
I think it adds a pretty cool dynamic.
Okay,
I think it's one of those.
It does add a completely different strategy, right? Yeah, for sure.
Look, okay, technically you are correct. It does add new looks from the analysis point of view that are very interesting.
Yeah.
However, you are in the room with the players. You speak with the players, so you should know what I'm about to say. That the players like groan and hate life right now. And they play Junkertown because a lot of people,
other players. Our players love it.
Oh my goodness!
Really?
Pirates, all of you. But
and
I'm just saying, like right now, it's a controversial map in terms of.
Sure.
Like what it causes playstyle wise, mostly because of the pirate ship. But I mean, it's interesting, right? I think it's probably good for the game that you have maps that force wildly differing playstyles. I don't know if the pirate ship its current. I mean, maybe people just learn to work around.
Well,
but it's.
We actually saw what Gladiators did, and they've been doing this for a while. But what they've done to kind of counteract that pirate ship is they just break it before it even begins. I think we saw it at World Cup as well. Yeah. Essentially, they just like went and hid, and then like kind of went through the corridors, and just hid in their spawn and literally killed them the second they came out. So
right, but
maybe
the one thing I'll note there is that is correct if you were able to interrupt it from starting, but it's sort of like it's almost like you're watching a wrestling submission move in video game form where. If they actually lock it in and get the first fight, you're just like, oh god, what is going on here? Not that I'm saying it's unbeatable or anything else. It's a gameplay flow that's interesting on the map. That
and it's definitely one of those maps that's harder to retake, I would say. And so once you do get rolling on that bastion, it's really hard to kind of stop it until you get to third, I would say.
Yeah, I agree that. I mean, I hope they do make more maps that are similar to Junkertown in the fact that the strategy is so different. Like it really shows Overwatch and really the the potential of how broad Overwatch can be. It's just I don't know if I want this to be the exact perfect example, but at least we have something. It's just cool. All right.
I think,
okay, go ahead. Yeah.
One last thing I note there is that I think that's one thing where over time, as new heroes get added to the game, in an ideal world, I'd like to see stuff like Pirate Ship like work if the other team isn't fully prepared for it. Like things you pull out every now and then to catch a team off guard where you go, that's a great swap to it. But now they're going to have to swap because so-and-so team has adapted. Not everyone, their mother knows this is coming, and we're going to run something where if we don't kill in the first push, like we're doomed. So I think for me, that's kind of one of those things where
it's not perfect.
End of the day,
perfect. Yeah,
it's just more heroes. I think will kind of help with that situation.
So I will say that the other thing, or I guess two things I would like to add, is that I don't think you'll see Pirate Ship every time. I think that teams have kind of figured out other things that they can do on that map. Whether or not they're going to bring it out, who knows? But I think other variants of this composition, even without Bastion, maybe might end up actually quite good. And the other thing I wanted to add is that I thought that Horizon also, I didn't like that map at first, but it's turned out to be also another map where you can run pretty unique stuff, not necessarily as much so as the whole pirate ship concept, but it's also a map where people are bringing bringing out a lot of different compositions and seeing success. We even saw Rascal today, and he's been doing this a lot. He brought out the May and was really successful with it. I talked to people on Gladiators afterwards, and they said, yeah, we just didn't know what to do at all against it. So definitely, I think that adding these kinds of maps where you see more unique strategies and more fun strategies, I'd say, can only be good for the game.
Yeah, I feel like Junkertown is still in that new kind of newlywed phase, right? Where it's just like, there's this one strategy that works. It's always the first strategy that works and is just the one that everybody just adopts until somebody figures out how to break it, and then somebody will, innovate a little bit further. And maybe it's that. I mean, you drop Bastion and it's just like, it's something completely different. And that even opens up new strategies after that. So it's still the beginning, I think, of just what the meta for Junkertown. All right, so next match, Dallas versus Houston. So this is one that I think a lot of people were, when they saw the schedules, looking forward to this because, the old Envious versus, FNRGFE matchup that we saw in Contenders. And, it's pretty close in Contenders. And we wanted to kind of relive or have this rematch, in OWL preseason. So that was what we saw today. And this match was, I think this one match really stood out because I think we saw the strategy of Overwatch League, and really just how the format is allowing for the subs and what that really means when you actually have the correct pieces to do it. We saw a lot of different changes, I think going from map to map, we saw different lineups, we saw different types of, just comps and things like that, and we saw different people playing, certain heroes. So I felt like this was the perfect example of what we'll probably see, in the future, and this is just the beginning of it. What's y'all's thoughts on this series?
Well, Dallas Houston is just a case of, it's hard to say what my thoughts are, aside from I think Houston at least proved that it's going to be pretty competitive. But both teams, because of the roster shifting and whatnot, it didn't really feel like either team was necessarily playing at 100%. So if of all the exhibition games, which these are, like it's preseason, it's exhibition, this felt like the most like an exhibition game, like what you would see in, say, like an NFL preseason game, where neither team is really going all out and both teams are trying different stuff and making swaps that they probably normally wouldn't.
And I definitely agree with that. Although I was wondering kind of why Dallas decided not to bring out XQC. I thought, if you're going to do what they ended up doing, where they even had a map, like you said, where they put Taimu on the Winston. Thought maybe that might be part of the strategy, but I also think that they are trying to transition Taimu more of a kind of all around player, so that he can kind of complement whatever the team's doing. Because I do know that just from talking to him and from knowing the guy really well, he's one of those people that is pretty much like one of the biggest voices on that team, and I think that's probably why they wanted to keep him in and make sure that the composition included him in some form, even if it was on a monkey instead of a Widowmaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely would agree with ZP in that I think this is the match that you draw the least from, because I don't think that either team look like they will throughout the rest of the season.
Okay. Like I felt like the execution was bad. You know what I mean? Like it was a lot of sloppy play, and I mean, not so much sloppy as much as unpracticed type of situations. Definitely. But I felt like the moves were, something that we might see. Like in terms of we should sub him for this and this. Yeah, the whole XQC thing, it was a little bit confusing, just because they had Coco playing, and they had obviously they had moments where even like Taimu were playing, and it's just like, dude, you've got XQC like sitting on the bench. I mean, that's going to be an improvement for that. So it was definitely interesting. Did you pull anything from the Houston team? Like anything stand out from how they're playing?
So just inside stuff, I guess I'd say, is that Jake is absolutely one of the better callers in NA, and that's something that he's not very much like touted for. But I know from watching this guy, spectating him, and like working with him, that he's actually quite good at that. And I think that that's really an underrated asset on this Houston team. So having Jake and Lynxer on this team, like one amazing mechanical player, one player that's just like the heart and soul of the team. I think it's a really great combo, and I think that that's probably one of the things they're going to explore a lot more come this season.
Are you telling me that Jake likes to talk? I personally,
who would have guessed?
Who knew that?
Do not believe
who actually knew
you.
that? Yeah. We love Jake.
Jake's a very intelligent guy, but like the idea that he's also talkative in game really should not be.
I mean, let's not downplay his play too. He played great. Yeah. I mean, he outplayed Taimu at times tonight, or a lot of times tonight actually.
His Pharah and his Junkrat looked really, really good. They were on point. So, props.
Yeah. All right. And lastly, we've got Boston versus the, New York Excelsior, which just happened not too long ago. And, a lot of people obviously thought New York was going to crush Boston. Boston, is one of those teams where in the beginning of, building teams, everybody was obviously very, very hard on Boston, but I think the talk right now is that they're not as bad as everybody thinks they are. They're actually, people putting them in that kind of 9 range now. And what'd you see tonight? Did you see that team that everybody's talking about recently?
Yes and no. They were kind of competitive with New York. They made Anubis close. They took a map. I don't remember which map they took. To be fair, they took the third map, and Dorado wasn't that close, to be honest. But actually, to add to that, they did, pressure NYXL to overtime on every single point. Mm-hmm. But like from watching Boston playing against them a lot, I personally have to take some flack, because I did think they were going to be one of the worst teams entering this league, and I think that they actually are going to be at least decent. Whether or not they end up in that top half or that bottom half, maybe that 8th spot, I can't really say for sure. But I do know just 2 takeaways from my perspective are that Striker is a really great player. I think people need to keep their eyes out. And I know the desk mentioned that as well. The other thing I'd say is that Gamsu is a really intelligent player. I've always known he was a good player. Obviously, like rank 1 in Korea in the first 2 seasons, I think, of Overwatch. But just from watching him, he's actually really intelligent. He knows when to use all of his abilities, when to get max value out of his Winston bubbles, and I think that kind of like a sleeper pick, if you want to watch out for Boston, definitely be watching out for that guy because he really enables the rest of the team to do their job.
I think, Boston definitely played better than people expected coming in. I would say, though, that New York was also kind of their own worst enemy. Like, the only reason why Dorado was even remotely close is that Pine basically did nothing in the very beginning of Dorado. Yeah. And yes, he played well, especially on the Dorado defense and later in the attack, but it's sort of like Pine was the one who put them in the hole to begin with because not only was his Widow not hitting shots, he was also like not really going for body shots. So you saw Sableby just sitting there in the back going, gee, I wish I had a distraction or damaged players to go after. So Sableby was just sitting there going, I can't do anything. And even when Pine swapped to Genji was like struggling a little bit in the beginning on Dorado, it was still effective because you still have to pay a Genji respect, right? And if you're looking at Genji, you're not looking at Sableby. That's the main reason why, even though Pine was kind of getting crushed early on, even when he swapped to Genji, you suddenly saw Sableby taking over the game, and it's because you had the boots on the ground to sort of be that distraction. So I don't know. It was interesting because I felt like NY was definitely not playing up to their usual potential, I would say here. For Boston, though, we'll see where things go. I mean, I think that a lot of things still have to be defined and where teams stand. Mm-hmm. I do think that you could have the headline, beleaguered Boston team beats Florida man later in the season. That much definitely seems like a possibility, but I don't know. We'll see. So far, I don't think the lists are necessarily wrong, but I do think Boston was more competitive than people gave them credit for.
And one thing I'd like to add to that, I think New York, they have potential to either be the number 1 team in the league or they could be the worst Korean league in the sense that these guys I've always been really high up on mm-hmm. the LW Blue guys. I really love them. One of the things I really like about that team is that they used to have been 3 really talented DPS players. They added in Pine later on, but they had Flower and they had Sabyolby. And those guys have always been really good. But one of the issues with LW Blue is that the team has always come short in LAN. Everybody that goes to Apex will tell you. Even Nevix was telling me today when we were talking, but that this is a team that always does really well in scrims, always just wrecks everybody, including teams like Seoul, who was Lunatic High, or even the Kongdus. And then when it comes to LAN, they don't show up and they fail to leave it out there. I'd say that one person in particular that's kind of left out of that is Sabyolby. He pretty much always seems to perform. Mm-hmm. We saw that at the World Cup. We saw that in his stats in previous seasons of Apex. But it's going to be really on the rest of these guys to make sure that they're not left behind in the dust, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting for Libero to, just really shine.
He's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he is amazing, but I don't know. It's like in the big moments in Apex, he just wasn't. So
one thing I think that also needs to be said is that Libero and Pine. Actually, maybe I'll refrain from saying all of that. But Libero, okay. we did. Well, I'm not sure whether this happened. I don't want to really.
Sure.
But we did see Libero on that support role. So like, the roles on this team might be really flexible. Like, I don't really know what's going to be happening. I think somebody was actually sick, or maybe it might have been
really?
Jonak.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe there was. Yeah, I think you're right. Actually.
Yeah. So. That might be the case, but I have seen these guys, not being afraid to swap things up. So, they have that flexibility down. They have really talented players. We'll see what that does.
One thing I think is worth noting is that we do get a little bit of a litmus test in the final games that go on here, as we kind of wrap up on time of this match. But going into tomorrow, we have the Shock versus the Spitfire, and we'll get to see if the Spitfire continues to do their Jekyll and Hyde act, balancing between Busan and Kongdu, or maybe we'll get the true fusion roster as if we're in some sort of anime battle. So that's gonna be interesting.
What you do, what you do, Harsh, is you get the crowd to start saying "GC Busan, GC Busan," right?
There we go.
Yeah. And then of course San Fran ends up winning, and then we learn that Harsha is now working for London.
Oh my god,
that means never dying. I'm sorry.
You know what? Actually, yeah, what was that? Was there like an asset left over that said London coach or something like that?
Oh, was it? No.
Yeah. So actually, what happened today was I got interviewed by Zoe at the stage, and I saw people were talking about online. When did Harsha become London coach? So
Right.
I wasn't really sure what happened there. I assume
Jack has already bought you. You just don't know.
I don't know it yet. Apparently,
Yeah, you didn't get that email. No.
So San Francisco is just a stepping stone, man. No, that's hilarious.
no leaks.
Exactly. So, all right, guys. Well, that's it for day 1, day 2. But day 3 is coming up, so there's gonna be plenty to talk about. And obviously, next week we'll get a chance to kind of review just how the preseason looked, and then we'll have to wait another 3 weeks, for more Overwatch. What was that, ZP?
I would say the matchups that are probably the most interesting to watch in terms of really
let's take a look
telling
at
where teams are at.
Yeah.
I would say Shanghai versus Boston is going to be very telling because that's probably Boston's best chance of picking up a win, but it's also a good way of seeing, all right, where does Shanghai stand on all this? Obviously going East Coast is a rough take. So I think that matchup's going to be particularly compelling. And then of course you have Seoul versus New York, where I think if New York makes the mistakes they did today, Seoul would probably beat them, but we could also see if New York also comes out with their best foot forward. And Mayhem versus Fuel, if Fuel treats it like an exhibition like they did, maybe Mayhem could do well, but if Fuel comes out with their real roster, doesn't swap as much, I think Mayhem's in a load of hurt.
That's one of the worst matchups, I think, of the last ones, right? Like the Mayhem versus Fuel, really? I don't know. I'm interested to see the Outlaws versus Dynasty tomorrow. I actually want to see how the Outlaws measure up. Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to see how competitive they are with. I think presumably the best Korean team in the league, because I mean, it's obviously a great litmus test, as you said. You want to put these guys up against the best and see the best. Sorry, voice crack, and see how they do. So we'll see.
Right. And I mean, we got the classic LA battle. We don't have the Lakers and Clippers anymore. We got the Valiant and the Gladiators, and they're this is the inauguration of the matchup, the inner city battle to see who's really the king of LA.
I like to imagine my mind as an internal battle of Overwatch ladder. You have the Los Angeles Mercy Mains against the Los Angeles Pick All.
Who
will win? We'll find out.
All right, well, guys, at this time, I wanted to remind you guys that we are sponsored today by Freshly. Freshly is a meal service that you can order these awesome freshly cooked meals that will be sent, or they're prepared and they're sent to you, and you can actually just get them ready to eat in 3 minutes. They're always fresh. They're never frozen. So it's not like a frozen dinner where it comes out of the freezer and they send it to you. How it works is chefs actually cook them and they immediately, kind of seal them, put them in these cooler boxes, and they send them to you. So within 24 hours of being cooked, you should be getting these meals, and it's up to you when you eat them. You don't have to eat them right away if not, but that's kind of how they're prepared and sent to you. So they're all 100% natural, no artificial flavors, preservatives, or refined sugars, and no gluten. And they're also designed by nutritionists, which, you got to eat healthy too, which is always good. But, they sent us each, myself and ZP and Fish Sticks, a few to try out. ZP, did you, I forget which ones did you get? Were they good? Which ones did you,
ones
the
I
ones
got,
that you
if I can remember, I got chicken parmigiana, chicken marsala, chicken pilaf that was sent in as a bonus, and then veggie baked penne. And the one thing I'll say about the meals is that obviously they are prepared fresh. The biggest thing that I'd give them props on is that since I did have 3 chicken offerings, I feel like I'm qualified to talk about the chicken here. I know my chicken. No, but the chicken breasts were very generous in regards to this. These were high quality. They were not just a little bit. It was very tasty. The vegetables also were generally a lot fresher than you would expect, especially from other offerings and anything that's pre-cooked and sent to you. So I was overall pretty impressed with it. Just I would say the big thing is that quality meat was high and the vegetables were noticeably fresh.
Yeah. You know what? When all 4 of them, I actually cooked them all at once. I had just
wow, I'm supposed to be the glutton.
I didn't eat them all at once, but I had like just every Friday we usually have like the family over, so I just decided like, hey, we got these like on Thursday, I think, so figured we just kind of cook them all up and try them out and just get like everybody's impression of it. So overall, I think it was really good. I had the meatloaf, the veggie penne, the chili, the turkey chili, and then they gave me this Southwest veggie mix thing. And normally I would never have ordered the Southwest veggie mix. Like, no way would I have picked that, just if I had my choice. But I have to say, that was like my favorite out of all 4 of the things that they sent me. It was actually super tasty. But overall, yeah, everything tasted really, really fresh, and the flavors were really good. So definitely check out Freshly at freshly.com and enter the overview, or not the overview, just overview promo code, and you'll get $40 off your first 2 deliveries. So definitely check that out. And, if you somehow are able to communicate with them, thank them for promoting the show. All right, a bit of news. I think we kind of touched on it. Miraculous Youngster, basically disbanding. At first it was they were just going to take a break, right, from Overwatch, but I don't know. I just didn't really think about that as just like disbanding altogether. I don't know if you guys like read that between the lines, but yeah. Any surprises here? I mean, with the news, not really, right? Okay.
I mean, I'm not really sure what to make of it. This was the best team in China, not even just by a close margin, by a considerable margin.
Right? How is this? Like, is it a contract issue? Like, what's going on? Like, why aren't they on Shanghai?
I have a feeling there's something kind of going on, but I have no knowledge of it, and I have no way of saying something shady is going on. So maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I have literally no idea.
Of all the scenes in Overwatch, I don't know the inner workings of China, regards
yeah,
of course, because like it's a difficult scene to follow from the outside in, and when there's a language barrier which is substantial, it just I don't know. Like I don't know the inner workings. Like the funny thing is that when you hear us talk about the North American and EU teams, everyone's always holding their punches, right? Like everyone that's on the show generally is well connected and knows more than what they're saying, and they sort of have to parse things out in a politically correct way that's not leaks. But when it comes to China and Overwatch, I'm sort of honestly, I don't have any insider info. It's just I don't know.
Well, hopefully we'll see it get worked out, because there's a lot of talented people, a lot of talented players on that team, and now that they're removed from it, I'd be surprised there's still something like blocking them from joining that team. There's probably going to be another China team too. Like,
hopefully come March. I mean, I hope come March a few of them are picked up for this team. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Another little bit of news: ACAM joins Team Red Bull. So I'm assuming that Red Bull's going to have a contenders team.
No, this is actually just it's just like a Red Bull athlete, basically.
Oh, it's just a Red Bull athlete. Okay, so it has nothing to do with. Never mind, guys.
Ignore
what I just said. Yeah. So
let's talk about the real benefit, though.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the real benefit. It's not whatever money they're paying him. Yeah. It's that the man gets free Red Bull.
ZP's favorite.
Okay. Yeah. Red Bull can cost a lot of money after a while. Yeah.
So if AKM suddenly develops a heart condition, we know why.
Oh my God, Red Bull will never sponsor this show ever. Because of this
it's also Jesus. That is a joke. That is, if Red Bull, if you're watching, I would love to have free Red Bull. My heart is great.
Oh my God. Anyways, yeah, I guess getting essentially a sponsorship, which is cool. Just in preparation for those couple months until pickup time. I'm assuming we'll see. But Q&A, guys, we got some questions from the just folks that are fans of the show and wanted to get one in. We got Kevin S here has a Symmetra question. Oh yeah, Symmetra has been in the center of a lot of toxicity in the community, to say the least. Would given the Symmetra the mercy treatment by putting her ultimate abilities as weaker regular abilities on E, and then giving her some type of defense ult on par with Lucio and Zen, give her a better off support option or role for both offense and defense. She would then become an equivalent to Mercy for the role that would be helpful in defending flankers like Genji while still offering barrier piercing utilities. For a weaker teleport, you'd have to do or give 2 or 3 charges, put 30 to 60 second cooldown, and for shield gen, something similar. So yeah, you think there needs to be a redesign of Symmetra, that kind of incorporates her ultimate on a regular ability and, maybe adding something like that.
So I think there needs to be a redesign, but not of the hero, but of when you can pick heroes. Here's the reality: is that I think specialist heroes are good for the game.
Okay.
I don't think players have the self-control to use them properly, is what it boils down to. Where what I would like to see, and this is sort of this would be a new thing for Overwatch, and yet I think it would be entirely fitting and solve a whole lot of issues, is that instead of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and make Symmetra more generalist or make Torbjorn more generalist, embrace the fact that turret heroes by their very nature are much better on defense. And then what you do is you lock them so they're only pickable on defense, and you can't pick them at all on control. You stop trying to put players in the situation of, oh, but what if you made this like clearly defensively designed hero work on attack, and go, no, we're not going to give you that option. We're going to make this the best possible hero for a defensive situation. But the flip side is you can now only pick it on defense. I think that solves a lot of issues, both with the design of these heroes in terms of, people trying to play it in wrong areas, but also very much fixes some of the very public ladder issues with the one-tricking issue. Because realistically speaking, when people complain about one-tricks, the thing they're complaining about most are Symmetra and Torb on attack.
Yep, that's true. Okay, I mean that is a solution. I could see.
I definitely see merit in that. Although I'm sure a lot of people would be really, really unhappy. I mean, I think one thing to note is kind of that if you did do this, you need to kind of revamp the class system and make the categories more fitting. You don't want to. Maybe you could just do it specifically for those two heroes, because those two do seem to be the current problem.
Yeah, but Widow on defense would be pretty crappy. Like, you can't play Widow on offense to counter. Yeah, that'd be just wrong. Yeah.
So, I don't have an exact solution. I'm not a dev for a reason. But
yeah.
But there definitely does seem to be some sort of issue, between self-control and having a hero that's specifically built for a specific kind of point in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that just to just kind of throw in a different angle is that I don't think a redesign for Symmetra is such a bad idea either. You know what I mean? Like, keep her teleport, keep her, shield gen if you want. But, I mean, the rest of the stuff just, like the turret, the sentries and things like that. I mean, they really don't have that much of a purpose right now. They're not that effective at all, to be honest. So
here's the problem, and this is like the eternal problem with turret heroes in an FPS game in particular, is that for turret heroes, if you make the hero good at general combat, suddenly the turret hero is obscenely overpowered because you get to add free damage while being a good combat hero. So you're kind of in a rock and a hard place here, where if you're going to stick to the idea of turrets, you have to have these heroes sort of function the way they are right now. And unfortunately, the way turrets work is that you can't, like, making it work on an offensive end is incredibly complicated, to say the least, and potentially not even really workable without making the hero just ungodly powerful. So as far as it goes, I just feel like you either embrace the fact that they're turret heroes or you scrap the idea of turrets entirely. But I think you could actually do that with Symmetra. I don't think Symmetra is like inherently linked to the idea of having turrets. I think you could just like rework her and remove that part entirely. Torb, you're kind of stuck with the turret.
I mean, the Torb turret is just simpler. Like, you just build one turret, and if it dies, then you just build one turret again. With Symmetra, it's just like you spend like a good minute preparing, like setting up these turrets, and then once they're gone, you're just kind of like, shit, it's got to take me another 60 seconds to set these things up, or whatever, 30 seconds to set these things up again. So it could still be turret. It's just, I think it just has to be designed a little differently and simpler, and just allow her to actually do it at a higher frequency. Because, right now it just doesn't matter. After her first positioning, it's just over. Like, she basically has no other ability there, that, or at least impactful ability.
There is one thing real quick. There was one thing I wanted to see from Symmetra for ages, and this is just would make her much more fun to play, is that generally the way charge mechanics work or can work in video games, that the bigger something is, the slower it goes. Yeah. It would be nice for Symmetra if you could do like smaller charged orbs that move a lot quicker, so you could alternate between like the big orb that's space clearing and small orbs that are meant to actually like hit people rather than just zone them out.
Okay, yeah, sure. Harsha,
I guess. Yep. Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd add is that these heroes do probably need a revamp of some sort. I mean, Blizzard has actually noted that Symmetra and Torbjorn are two of the highest win rate heroes in the game, and then they also have this negative stigma. So two opposite sides of the spectrum. Maybe we could bring both of them closer to the middle.
We got to ignore console like stats for that. No.
Fair.
Yeah, that is a very weird. That's a tough place for the designers to be in. Whenever you're seeing that sort of thing. But all right, well, guys, if you guys have any questions for us next week, go ahead and send those to the overview at ChanManV.tv. Definitely try to read them out. But that's gonna be it for this week, Harsha. So it's a pleasure having you, Harsha. Maybe one last thing for you, Harsha. Just the fact that now that you're on the San Francisco and again, just kind of want to get your thoughts on just like how far you've come. Like it was like a year ago, year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, you're making videos for the first time, like on YouTube and posting on Reddit, and now we see you obviously being an analyst on one of the OWL teams, and we've seen other community members like Captain Planet being hired recently, as the stats guy for OWL, and just community kind of taking care of the community, type of thing. So yeah, just want to get your thoughts on that, how you feel about it.
I mean, I'm really obviously grateful for people, not just the people that got me into this position by bringing me up, but everybody that watches my videos, like everything like that. It always helps in that sense. I mean, it's kind of cool to be in a new scene because kind of when you start out that scene, people that do work kind of rise with it. People like ZP were one of the original, or I guess he and Hex were kind of the original casters, and they're very prominent in the scene still. You mentioned Ben. Both myself and he have been working in the scene since the beginning. So I think that you're right in the sense that people do take care of their own kind of, and it's nice to be here.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I'm definitely happy to see the success you've had. And any shout outs you want to do before you take off here?
I'll shout out my team, I guess. Hashtag shock the world. My hashtag suggestion was actually hashtag get shook. Got beat out. It got beat out by 2%. So unlucky. Next time maybe. But no, that's about it.
Okay, well, that's good.
Well, actually, no. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh yeah, of course, man. We got to do it again, definitely. And for those of you like Harsha's been, I don't know how many podcasts you've been part of or been doing recently. So he is Mr. Overwatch Podcast these days, man. I'm just glad that we at least we finally figured out time to have you on. What was that, ZP?
No, I said there are a lot of them nowadays.
There are a lot of
yeah. ZP, shout outs.
I mean, shout out wise, of course, shout outs to Overwatch League now launching. Definitely catch a find 2 days of preseason. And then something Twitter plug at Tempo ZP. I'm just like, it's one of those things where it's like I should have more gusto in plugging Twitter, but it's like,
yeah. Lastly, for me, thanks to the two of you guys for doing the show. It's obviously kind of late, and everybody else for watching too. I know I did it a bit late tonight, but we're probably gonna have to do this. Well, no, actually, we don't have to do it next week because there's not gonna be any matches, so might go back to a little bit earlier time. But again, you can catch the VODs at youtube.com/ChanManV. Overwatch League, guys, it's here finally. We've waited so long, and we're seeing the actual product, and then regular season is going to be here just at a blink of the eye once the new year starts. So get ready for it. This is going to be a big time for Overwatch, and can't wait to see where actually this rocket ship goes in the end. But you can find this podcast also on iTunes as well as Google Play and SoundCloud.com/ChanManV. But that's going to be it, guys, for this week. So for Harsha, ZP, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next week.
Can't tell if we're dreaming now.